All right, so let's talk about the caliphates. Again, Islam had an almost instant effect on the polytheistic nomadic herders of the Arabian Peninsula. They united them under one faith, either by force or choice. Islamic armies, missionaries, and merchants spread the faith rapidly eastward and westward. So, by 732, Muslims and Christians were fighting for control of France at the Battle of Tours. So by that date, Islam had replaced Christianity as the dominant culture in North Africa and Spain. Muslim and political social influence is called Dar al-Islam, and it stretched from Spain across North Africa and into modern-day India and Pakistan by the 8th century. And I talked about in the last video how Islam was unable to establish a clear line of succession after Muhammad, so the faith was fractured into regional caliphates. The first caliphate was called the Umayyad, and it lasted from 661 to 750. They originally ruled from Damascus, Syria, but after clashing with the rival Abbasid Caliphate, which I'll talk about in a second, it established a dynasty in Cordoba, Spain. The Umayyad clan took control again in 661, and they continued to conquer Syria, Egypt, Persia, Byzantine territory, West Africa, North Africa, and Spain. Their military skills, their soldiers' commitment to Islam, and the promise of plunder helped them lead these successful conquests. They set up a bureaucratic structure in which local administrators governed the conquered areas, and all cultures were tolerated as long as they obeyed Islam, paid their taxes, and didn't revolt. And Arabic became the official language of the administration, business, law, and trade. Again, they were overthrown by the Abbasids in 750, but they set up a separate caliphate in Cordoba, Spain, and this was also called the Iberian Caliphate. Muslim rule was supreme in Spain until its peak in the 11th century and remained an important presence there until the late 15th century. And while the rest of Western Europe was working to recover from the collapse of the Roman Empire, Spain was wealthy and stable under the Umayyads. Arab technology and trade was passed down by merchants and others from Asia, but kept Spain out of the discord that the rest of Western Europe was feeling during the Middle Ages. So the Abbasid Caliphate was centered in Baghdad, and it stretched at its peak in the 10th century from modern Turkey into Central Asia and across North Africa. Baghdad was one of the world's most cosmopolitan cities, with Arabs, Persians, Europeans, Turks, South Asians, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, and Muslims living there. The Abbasids participated in a large deal of cultural borrowing. They adapted cultural traits from neighbors and made them their own. For example, Persians served in the government, and Persian art, language, and literature were prominent among the Abbasids, including stories like Aladdin and Sinbad the Sailor from 1001 Nights, which is the Arabian Nights. Turkish Muslims from the north, like the Seljuks, had held important posts in the Abbasid Caliphate. Mosque, hospitals, schools, and orphanages were built during this empire. Intellectual developments like algebra, the concept of latitude and longitude, and the study of Greek philosophers like Aristotle were going on. The House of Wisdom was built in Baghdad in 830, and it sought out Greek and Persian texts and translated them into Arabic. During this time also, in the Umayyad Caliphate, a university was being established. Universities were also being established in the Abbasid Caliphate. In art and architecture, the use of images was forbidden, so geometric shapes and calligraphy were used in their works. Even though the caliphate declined and ended with Mongol invasions, the influence of Islam continued to spread throughout the period. And so by the conclusion of this period, Dar al-Islam had developed into one of the most dominant influences throughout the Eastern Hemisphere. Over time, the Abbasids lost power to local rulers and faced peasant revolts throughout the empire. And again, ultimately, they were destroyed by the Mongols in the 13th century. And they fell in a very similar way that we've already discussed, like the Huns and the Romans. What's important about the Abbasids is that they often refer to this era as the Islamic Golden Age. Scholars, poets, scientists, and artists from the inside and out were welcomed into the region. And this is some example of some Abbasid art and architecture. It's very geometric, symmetrical, you can tell.